I've always been a bit of a thrill seeker, and when I'd exhausted all the haunted houses and urban exploration sites in my area, I turned to the dark web for a new kind of rush. My name is Alex Turner, a 32-year-old software engineer with a penchant for the macabre. By day, I was the picture of normalcy, an unassuming guy with a steady job, a small apartment, and a circle of friends who had no idea about my darker inclinations. But by night, I was a different person, driven by an insatiable curiosity that led me down paths most people would never dare to tread. It started innocently enough, poking around in forums, stumbling across bizarre conspiracy theories and illegal marketplaces. But then I found the forum. The entrance was hidden behind layers of encryption, requiring me to navigate through endless captchas and proxies. Finally, I was in. It was called the Obscura, a place where the depraved met the curious. The first thing that struck me was the sheer variety of topics, everything from organ trafficking to ritualistic ceremonies. It was a cesspool of humanity's worst inclinations. I didn't participate much at first, just lurked in the shadows, reading through threads. But one night, I saw a post titled "The Show." It promised a live stream experience unlike any other, something that would scar your soul. Morbid curiosity got the best of me, and I followed the link. The stream required a hefty payment in Bitcoin, and once I paid, I was granted access to a private chat room with a few other spectators. The screen was black for what felt like an eternity, and then it flickered to life. The scene was a dimly lit room, the kind you see in low-budget horror films: concrete walls, a single hanging bulb, and a figure in the center, hooded and bound. A distorted voice crackled over the audio, welcoming us to the show. The host, hidden behind the camera, began to describe what we were about to witness. He called it the unveiling, a series of live executions, each more grotesque than the last. The first victim was a young man, maybe in his 20s. The hood was ripped off to reveal his terror-stricken face. The camera zoomed in, capturing every detail of his despair. The host rambled about the man's supposed crimes, but it was clear this was just a sick justification for what was about to happen. I wanted to turn it off, but I couldn't. It was like a train wreck, horrifying, yet impossible to look away from. The executioner stepped into frame, wearing a grotesque mask. He moved with deliberate precision, drawing out the agony. The screams were muffled at first, but quickly grew to a pitch that made my blood run cold. The chat exploded with sickening excitement, urging the executioner on. I closed the stream, but the image of that young man's eyes, pleading, terrified, was seared into my mind. I should have stopped there, but the darkness had already taken hold. I went back the next night, and the next, each show more brutal than the last. It wasn't until the 7th show that I saw someone I recognized. Her name was Emma, a girl I'd known from high school. We weren't close, but seeing someone I had once interacted with in that position brought the horror to a personal level. She was strapped to a chair, bruised and bloody, but still defiant. The host taunted her, listing off her supposed transgressions. It was clear they were just excuses, reasons to justify the carnage. The executioner began his grim work, but this time I couldn't look away. I watched every second, feeling a mix of guilt, horror, and a sickening fascination. After it was over, I tried to report what I'd seen. I went to the police, but they didn't take me seriously. I was just another guy with a wild story from the dark web. I provided screenshots, links, everything I had, but it was all dismissed as fiction, a disturbed fantasy. The guilt eats at me every day. I can't sleep, can't think straight. I see Emma's face every time I close my eyes. I wonder how many others there were, how many more there will be. The dark web isn't just a place, it's a trap, a vortex of evil that once entered, you can never truly escape. And the worst part? A part of me still wants to go back. Then one evening, there was a knock on my door. It was the police, but not with the news I had hoped for. They had come to arrest me. Alex Turner, you are under arrest for participating in illegal activities on the dark web, the officer said as he cuffed my hands behind my back. I tried to explain, to tell them I was just a spectator, that I had come forward to help, but it was no use. They had found my digital footprint all over the Obscura, and in their eyes, I was just as guilty as the monsters behind the camera. As I was led away, I realized the horrifying truth. The real perpetrators, the ones orchestrating the gruesome shows, were still out there, hidden behind layers of anonymity. The police had caught me, but they had barely scratched the surface of the dark web's malevolent depths. And as I sat in my cell, haunted by the faces of the victims, I knew that the show would go on, unseen and unstoppable. I've always been curious. As a computer science major, I knew my way around the internet pretty well. The deep web was no exception, but it was the dark web that truly fascinated me, the forbidden fruit of the digital age. I heard whispers about it, illegal activities, horrifying images, red rooms. I convinced myself it was all urban legend, until one night I decided to explore it for myself. I was alone in my dorm, the campus silent, at 3 a.m. My roommate was out of town, and the darkness outside mirrored the darkness I was about to dive into. Using Tor, I navigated through the hidden layers of the web. It started innocently enough. Forums, drug markets, conspiracy theorists. But then I found it, a link labeled The Watching Room. The name intrigued me. I clicked, and the screen flickered before loading a plain black page with a single red button in the center. It read, "Enter." My heart pounded as I clicked the button. The screen filled with a live video feed from a poorly lit room. The camera was static, positioned in a corner, offering a wide view of the space. A single chair sat in the center of the room, empty. I waited, breath bated. After a few minutes, a man walked into the frame. He was tall, dressed in dark clothes, his face obscured by a mask. He dragged someone into the room, a young woman, bound and gagged. My stomach churned. This was no act. Her terror was palpable. I should have closed the window, reported the sight, done something, but I was frozen, horrified, yet unable to look away. The man started talking, but there was no sound. He moved behind the woman, lifted a knife. My mind screamed to shut it off, but my fingers betrayed me. I watched as he toyed with her, the blade glinting in the dim light. He didn't rush. This was a performance, meticulously designed for the unseen audience, an audience that now included me. When he finally acted, the violence was swift and brutal. Blood pooled on the floor, the woman's eyes wide with fear, then lifeless. I felt bile rise in my throat, but I was still unable to move. The man turned to the camera, bowed as if he had just completed a stage performance, then walked out, leaving the body slumped in the chair. The screen went black, replaced by a message. "Thank you for watching. Next show, tomorrow, same time." I slammed the laptop shut, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I couldn't erase the image of the woman's final moments. Sleep was impossible. The next day, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was staged, some grotesque art project, but deep down, I knew what I had seen was real. Against my better judgment, I returned to the site the following night. Same time, same room. A different woman this time, but the same masked man. This time, I didn't watch the entire act. I couldn't, but I kept returning, night after night. Each show more gruesome than the last, each victim different, but always ending the same way. Then one night, the show changed. The room was empty, the chair gone. The man entered, dragging another bound figure. My breath caught when I saw the figure's face on the screen. It was me. The man pulled off his mask, revealing a face I recognized all too well. My own. He grinned, a sickening mirror image, and pointed at the camera. The feed cut to black, replaced by the message, "You're next." Panic consumed me. I tore apart my dorm, searching for cameras, anything that could have been watching me. But there was nothing. I fled the dorm, leaving everything behind. I reported the site to the authorities, but by then, it had vanished, leaving no trace. I live in fear now, constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the moment I would come for me. Because somewhere in the dark web, my doppelganger is still out there, watching, waiting for the perfect moment to complete the final show. I could have never imagined that a casual night out with friends could spiral into my worst nightmare. The night started at a popular bar downtown, the kind where you recognize faces but rarely exchange more than pleasantries. It was supposed to be an evening of drinks, laughter, and a much-needed break from my grueling work schedule. Around midnight, I noticed a guy at the bar who kept glancing my way. He was handsome in a rugged sort of way, and eventually, he made his way over, striking up a conversation. His name was Alex, and he seemed charming enough. We talked for a while, and he offered to buy me a drink. I remember feeling a bit lightheaded after the first sip, but I brushed it off, thinking it was just the alcohol hitting me too quickly. The next thing I remember was waking up in a dimly lit room, my wrists and ankles bound to a cold metal chair. Panic surged through me as I realized I had no idea where I was or how I'd gotten there. My head throbbed, and my mouth felt like it was filled with cotton. The room was silent, except for the hum of a camera mounted on a tripod, its lens trained on me. I struggled against the restraints, my heart pounding as the reality of my situation set in. This wasn't a prank or a mistake. I had been abducted. The door creaked open, and Alex stepped inside, but the charming facade was gone. His eyes were cold and calculating. "Welcome to the show," he said, a sinister smile playing on his lips. "You're the star tonight." He pointed to the camera, and it dawned on me. I was going to be tortured live on the dark web. I had heard stories about these depraved corners of the internet, but I never thought I'd end up as one of their victims. Alex approached me, pulling a cart of surgical tools and other implements of pain. He seemed to relish my fear, savoring every moment of my helplessness. "The audience is eager," he said, picking up a scalpel and holding it to my cheek. "They've paid good money to see you suffer." The first cut was shallow but agonizing, a thin line of fire tracing down my cheek. I screamed, but the walls absorbed the sound. Alex's eyes gleamed with sadistic satisfaction as he made more incisions, each one deeper than the last. Blood trickled down my face and neck, pooling on the floor beneath me. Time lost meaning as the torture continued. He burned me with cigarettes, broke my fingers, and inflicted pain in ways I didn't think were possible. I fought to stay conscious, knowing that passing out might mean the end. The camera captured every moment, broadcasting my agony to a faceless, heartless audience. Hours, or perhaps days, passed in a blur of pain and fear. But amidst the torture, I noticed something. Alex had grown careless, leaving a small utility knife within my reach. My chance came when he left the room, probably to check on the dark web stream or grab more tools. With trembling hands, I maneuvered the knife, sawing through the ropes that bound my wrists. It took every ounce of strength I had left, but finally, I was free. I stumbled to the door, every step sending waves of pain through my battered body. I found myself in a dingy hallway and limped towards the exit sign at the far end. The door led to an alleyway, and the cool night air hit me like a slap. I didn't stop running and didn't look back until I found a busy street. People stared as I collapsed, a bloodied, broken figure begging for help. The police arrived quickly, and I was taken to the hospital. They found Alex and shut down the dark web stream, but I knew that the trauma would never truly leave me. Every night, I relived the torture in my nightmares, the camera's unblinking eye searing into my memory. I had escaped the dark web's clutches, but I would never be free from its shadow.